Some things are such a perfect match that you are actually surprised when you learn that they have not been there forever. The GIZ started its work in the Philippines only 50 years ago, based on the bilateral agreement that was signed by the German and the Philippine government on September 7 in 1971. Since then, the GIZ has become a household name for hundreds of programs and projects of development cooperation, climate change and environment protection, peace building in Mindanao, the deployment of Filipino healthcare workers to Germany, and much more. GIZ has established solid relations with all relevant stakeholders in the Philippine government, private sector, and civil society. I would like to congratulate the GIZ, the German government's prime partner for comprehensive project work worldwide, for half a century of excellent work in the Philippines, and thank the GIZ representatives and staff for their committed work that has generated an enormous impact in contributing towards sustainable development and improvement of the living conditions of the Filipino population.
Why does Germany, through GIZ, cooperate with the Philippines in achieving sustainable development? Because we share one world, and we believe in the power of partnership with the Filipino people.
We Filipinos dream a lot. With GIZ, we see that if we can plan to make our dreams come true and then follow through, we can make them come true.
It's a very important partner. It's even an urgent partner for us to concretize our vision of making a well-planned province down to the barangay level so that we will integrate the planning in terms of disaster and climate change.
We Filipinos are naturally talented people, and we easily stand out in skills wherever we go. With GIZ, we see that if we continue to develop, apply, and pass on our skills, there's no telling how far we'll go.
Idako ang income na mo noong 2018 hanggang karong 2019 kay base sa among mga kuha ng mga seminar ug mga na grant sa mga abono maga na yang kupras ba so nibukat among kupras ni-increase siya og mga nasa mga 20% ang increase ato.
Isang malaking oportunidad ang makalahok ng ganitong training sapagkat isang malaking tulong ito sa aking field, sa aking pagbabalita. May mga panibagong information, may mga panibagong kaalaman na magagamit mo. Aking ibabahagi ang aking nalaman dito, pagsulong sa kanila ng kaalaman, awareness sa pagbibigay ng impormasyon at paggamit ng social media. Ipagpapatuloy ko rin ang tumulong lalong-lalo na sa larangan ng pagsulong ng kapayapaan.
We Filipinos live in a society where togetherness takes center stage. We enjoy being together and celebrating together. With GIZ, we see that if we can harness that attitude to work effectively together, we can have peace and we can achieve more.
I think the legacy is really the value and the culture of respect and working together.
The San Jose Elementary School experience in improving our toilets teaches us a lot. The PTA, the teachers, parents, and pupils work together in solving our from simple to complex problem.
We Filipinos are blessed with a beautiful and biologically mega-diverse country. With GIZ, we see that we can pursue a bright future while keeping our country blessed and beautiful.
At least 40% of the energy cost ay natipid po namin. Dumami yung customers talaga dito. Na-amaze sila with the greening project.
Project is actually one of the most relevant projects that we had. It's the first initiative that we had towards greening efforts.
We will make sure that our MSMEs really clearly understand the importance of greening their operations and going green, because it is one, if not the only way for them to really be more competitive. And all our training programs will also carry with it the greening advocacy.
Facebook page.
Magandang hapon po at masayang pamilya, as we say in the Commission on Population and Development. I am Maikira, your moderator for this afternoon. So as we start, we'd like to request everyone to please stand up as we invoke the presence of the Lord, and please remain standing for the singing of our national anthem.
Philippines.
Please take your seats, ladies and gentlemen. So, magandang hapon po, masayang pamilya. Maraming salamat po for gracing this event, this celebration. So, we would like to acknowledge our participants for today. First off, we'd like to acknowledge from PSA, Philippine Statistics Authority. Alright, please let us know if you're here. Okay, please raise your hand or make your presence felt. UNFPA, our early bird. Alright, and then Agam Agenda, PBSP, okay, Wagi, yun. And then Climate Change Commission, we have Commissioner Rachel Herrera. And then we have DNR and BISUD, okay, and we have the Executive Director of the Health Action Information Network, Ms. Maria Corazon de la Paz. Yan. And we'd like to acknowledge Ms. Laura Oxley. Alright. And, of course, Mr. Emmanuel Jebhart. Dr. Bjorn Soberg. Alright. And from POPCOM, our Executive Director, Dr. Lisa Grace Bersales, Undersecretary Lisa Grace Bersales. We have our Deputy Executive Director, Mr. Lolito Tacardon. We have the Division Chief of the Knowledge Management and Communications Division, Ms. Susana Cododco. We have the Division Chief of the Policy Development and Data Management Division, Ms. Aileen Serrano. We have the Division Chief of the Capacity Development and Field Operations Division, Ms. Lyra Borja. And everyone, thank you for coming. The POPCOM Central Office participants are also here. Alright, so without further ado, let us begin. We are live on Facebook, so you may also tune in at the Commission on Population and Development Facebook page. Alright, and to welcome all of us today is the Deputy Head of Mission at the Embassy of the Federal Republic of Germany in the Philippines. She previously worked in the Embassy of the Federal Republic of Germany in Egypt and the Federal Foreign Office in Berlin, Germany. She completed her bachelor's in International Economics and East Asian Studies at University of Tübingen, Germany, and double degree in Master's in International Political Economy and in Economic Policy at the London School of Economics and Sciences in Paris. Please welcome, ladies and gentlemen, let's give her a warm Filipino welcome, Ms. Laura Oxley.
Thank you very much. Hello everyone, good afternoon. Dear Undersecretary Dr. Lisa Grace Bersales, Executive Director of the POPCOM, dear POPCOM Deputy Executive Director Mr. Tagardon, dear Emmanuel and dear Björn, of course, dear Commissioner Rachel Herrera, good to see you again. Hello everybody. I am delighted to be present here today at this closing and handover celebration of the HMCCC project implemented by GIZ in the Philippines. HMCCC, or Human Mobility in the Context of Climate Change, is commissioned by the Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, the BMZ, As a global project, HMCCC provides support to climate-induced human mobility in the Caribbean, in East Africa, in West Africa, in the Pacific, and in the Philippines. In the Philippines, HMCCC has been in implementation with POPCOM since 2018, focusing on internal migration as affected by climate change. And I'm very proud to say that in POPCOM, we have found a highly proactive partner in delivering joint initiatives under the HMCCC. Capacity development measures in integrating climate change and human mobility in local development planning, relevant research studies and a knowledge portal, as well as digitalizing government tools in managing data on demographics and internal migration to support development planning. Therefore, I would really like to acknowledge the efforts of the POPCOM to actively adopting said measures and to sustain the joint outputs of this project. Apart from this important project, Germany is implementing a broad portfolio of projects on climate change mitigation and adaptation, renewable energy, forest and marine protection, and biodiversity in the Indo-Pacific. Tackling climate change to attain the goals of the Paris Climate Agreement is the focus area of the federal German government. In its policy guidelines for the Indo-Pacific, supporting countries like the Philippines, which is highly vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. This commitment to intensify our partnership with the Philippines on climate was underlined by the visit of our State Secretary and Special Envoy for Climate Action, Jennifer Morgan, during her several successful meetings in the last 3 days. We managed to kick off a regular climate consultations between our two governments yesterday, and we formalized a joint declaration of intent that has also been signed yesterday. Globally, 23.7 million people were displaced by extreme weather events in 2021 alone. Climate-sensitive sectors such as agriculture, fisheries, and water are also severely affected, further impacting livelihood and sources of income. Climate change-induced human mobility includes the displacement of people caused by extreme weather events, planned relocations made necessary due to climate change, and migration as a way of adaptation to climate change. Germany is supporting several international processes and agreements on this topic. At the Paris Climate Conference, Germany called for a working group focusing on climate change-induced displacement and migration, which contributed to the setup of the Task Force on Displacement in Warsaw International Mechanism for Loss and Damage. BMZ, our Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, further supported proposals made in the protection agenda endorsed in October 2015 towards the Nansen Initiative. Germany was also actively involved in the negotiations for the Global Compact for Safe, Orderly and Regular Migration, GCM, promoting exchange strategies and analysis of mobility patterns resulting from extreme weather events and slow-onset environmental changes. With these priorities in mind, let me underline that it is the goal of every development project to have its outputs sustained by our main government partners. And with POPCOM, I am sure, and we know that, we have a reliable partner who will sustain the HMCCC in its development agenda. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to today's event, and welcome from my side. Thank you.
Thank you to the government of Germany for considering us a proactive partner in the development. So at this point, we'll also have another welcome remarks from the Undersecretary and Executive Director of the Commission on Population and Development. She was a professor in statistics at the University of the Philippines, where she also served as Dean of the School of Statistics in the Diliman campus and Vice President for Planning and Finance of the system. Actually, I heard that kanina na it's a pleasant surprise though to see the first national statistician in the flesh where we see her name on our birth certificate. No, so she's the first national statistician of the Philippines and led the implementation of the Philippine Statistics Act of 2013 by setting up the Philippine Statistics Authority in 2014. And may I add, we also see her name in the sticker during census, right, on our doors. So I see heads nodding there. So here she is in the flesh, the head of the Commission on Population and Development, Dr. Lisa Grace Bersales. Yusek Lisa.
Thank you very much, Miss Laura Excel, our Deputy Head of Mission of the German Embassy here in the Philippines. Country Director Emmanuel Gerbhardt of GIZ, Emmanuel. Dr. Bjorn Schorberg of GIZ as well, Bjorn. Commissioner Rachel Herrera of our Climate Change Commission and colleagues from CCC. Assistant National Statistician Wilma Guillen of the Philippine Statistics Authority. Deputy Executive Director Boyet Ardon, and officials and technical staff of POPCOM and the POPCOM family. Of course, UNFPA, represented by Olan. Partners with other agencies and with CSOs. And do I see Edna, Professor Edna Ko? Professor Edna Ko of the University of the Philippines. Friends, good afternoon. Guten Tag alle. I hope I pronounce it correctly. Magandang hapon po sa ating lahat, masayang pamilya. Let me express my pleasure in seeing all of you here today, gathered for a key milestone in the bilateral partnership between the Philippines and the German governments. Philippine and German governments, particularly through the Commission on Population and Development and the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, as well as the German Agency for International Cooperation, or GIZ. With this very important handover celebration of the technical assistance on human mobility in the context of climate change, or we call HMCCC. Population and development, as we have emphasized in our Philippine programs and strategies on population, requires an updated understanding of ever-evolving bodies of knowledge. To borrow a term in the modern corporate parlance, PopDev, taking into account the dynamics of people movement in light of our planet's altered weather patterns, has become what is known as VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Thus, our initiative, HMCCC, has become an important dimension in the study and science of population, especially the Philippines, which already Laura mentioned as is considered a highly vulnerable country to the effects of climate change. In fact, the Philippines was ranked second among those most threatened by climate change. And this is according to the German Watch Institute. And we don't even mention the fact that we are in the Pacific Rim of Fire with all the volcanic eruptions and the earthquakes. And thus, the results of the Global Climate Risk Index 2020 during the United Nations Climate Change Conference, or COP25 in Madrid, emphasized this. We at POPCOM are devoting or have keen interest in the transits and location transfers of Filipinos, especially as of late that the nation has been reeling from the results of the new normal in our climate, where we don't anymore understand when the storms are coming. In the past, we know it will be July, June, July, August. Now it's almost every month. You don't know when the storms come. So recently, we have observed rural to rural transitions which stem from localized weather disturbances, from severe storms that have forced evacuation from low-lying localities to intense heat waves that have sent countryside workers packing to find livelihood in other areas or altogether in other forms. Disruptions such as these would be interesting to scrutinize right here and now in finding out if these would be the typical phenomena that the Philippine government as a whole could consider in crafting pertinent policies that would aid migrating Filipinos, especially those which require special aid in the long term. POPCOM, as a national government agency, has been monitoring this development by way of its close collaboration with GIZ. With this specialized expertise powered by the German federal government, GIZ has accorded POPCOM with technical tools in the form of the HMCCC Digital Registry of Barangay Inhabitants and Migrants. This is the RBIM, and the knowledge portal, so that they could provide data and information that could be relevant for local constituencies in affecting better population management and development in their areas. On this very important occasion, we will all be witnesses to the transitioning of the aforementioned tools from GIZ to POPCOM. It's a big task, really, that GIZ will be turning over, but I know that we're all in this together, as already shown by the participation of various government agencies and our CSO partners. I am of the strong belief that both the digital RBIM and the knowledge portal will greatly benefit local government units across the archipelago in further understanding the way our countrymen move in and out and around their areas of responsibility and authority. For us in POPCOM, this is a manifestation of our continuous efforts in working abreast with LGUs in providing an enhanced perspective of their territories, population dynamics toward a heightened sense of governance and service for their constituency's sake. It's all about how we in government, both national and LGUs, can serve our citizenry given the effects of climate change. On behalf of everyone in POPCOM, our allied agencies that are here with us today, and the Philippine government, we extend our sincerest thanks to the German government, the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, and GIZ for handing over these tools that will further develop POPDEV in the Philippines. Of course, I mentioned UNFPA as another important partner. This event will form part of our ongoing partnership for Filipinos, a people constantly on the move. We Filipinos were constantly on the move. And because we want to find a better tomorrow and a brighter future for our families and communities, despite the effect of ever-changing climate situations in our lives. Let me conclude my remarks by wishing all of you with our usual greeting in POPCOM. Masayang pamilya at magandang po sa ating lahat. We are looking forward to a more contented Filipino in families and communities. Our ambition natin 2040. Thank you. Maraming salamat. Danke schön.
Thank you very much, Yusek Lisa. So we feel climate change. We are Filipinos on the move. That's why we're all here to address such. And we'd like to acknowledge ASEC Lenny Uy from the DNR, Department of Environment and Natural Resources. Where's ASEC ba? There. Alright, thank you po for coming, ASEC. And we'd like to acknowledge also the advisor from GIZ, Francisco Dacumos. And also, Director Edna Ko from UPCPAL Philippines. There she is. Alright, and another welcome message is the Country Director of the GIC Philippines and Pacific Islands. He previously worked as Head of Procurement and Contracting at GIC Ashbourne Office and served as Head of Division on East Asia, China, and India Business Development Work of GIZ. He completed his studies in political science and law at Munich, Germany. Please welcome, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Emmanuel Jabhart. Bigyan natin siya ng warm Filipino welcome.
Thank you to all of you, and permit me to welcome you also in the name of GIZ. I'm country director now since 1 year, and I enjoyed really the time in the Philippines, and I learned a lot, and I'm very happy to be here today for this. GIZ is working since many years on climate change and also since many years on human mobility, and so that's a very important topic to me, and that's the reason why I want to thank especially to POPCOM, the Commission on Population and Development, which is our excellent partner for this wonderful project, and for making this event feasible what we have today. Exactly, what we are doing today, we are not closing a project. Everybody can read, we have a handover celebration. So we just handing over something what has been done together, POPCOM and GIZ, now only to be continued by POPCOM. So it's a kind of handover, but to a partner who has had it already during the last 5.5 years. So it's only a shift in a certain way, but we will continue to look at it. We are very happy about it, and from the German side, it was a very successful program. It's a global program which had a lot of other stances. Particularly, I'm also involved in one of the Pacific Island countries because they also did the same thing, and it's really great to look at it. What has been moved here. I think the most vulnerable countries have been involved, and the Philippines are one of the most vulnerable countries to climate change. That's without any doubt. The reason is the many islands you have, 7,000, really a lot. So that's the reason why climate change is really affecting you. It's dangerous, and that's the reason why the program makes so much sense. I had the opportunity on Monday myself to look at the consequences. We were going with our state secretary from Foreign Office who has been here to Tacloban, and so I could also see the things there, and since I'm only here since 1 year, I had the first opportunity to go there. And we have seen a so-called no-build zone, and we have seen what Hayuan or Yolanda has done there, and we want to make sure that this will not happen anymore so quickly. And if the things happen again, then at least then we have a plan in the pocket in a certain way. And we can say the people so-called no-build zone, there was no option of migration, it was a forced migration, you can call it. So it's very well to think about how we can avoid and have migration still as an option and not to have already a forced migration because of the bad consequences of the climate change. The project was working 5.5 years on it, and it achieved a lot. Johan Zurborg will give the milestones later, so I don't repeat them now, but I want to highlight just 2 things very shortly. It was one of the very successful outputs on the political level is that the climate change adaptation has been adopted as a kind of dimension in the Philippine Population and Development Plan, the PPCDC. So it has been integrated in it, and that's political, very successful, and a practical, very big success. That's the second thing, that all the potentially affected people regarding migration on account of climate change have been registered, and it's even in a digital way. So this registration is also a very good thing to have achieved in order to avoid that these people will be affected by climate change, kind of super typhoons as Hayuan was for Yolanda to come again. So to this results, to this 5.5 years of a lot of results, I want to congratulate you, your institution, Dr. Lisa. I want to thank you very much for this excellent cooperation and congratulate you to these good results. And also I want to say thank you, of course, to Laura Oechsle, for the German representative of the German government, for funding, also giving funds into this project, which is very important. And so really congratulations to both of you. And I also want to thank, of course, the people having been closer involved and with the things, getting the results done. And Mr. Lolito Takarandon, sitting here, thanks especially to you from the Filipino side, following up all the operational issues and all the things. And also Björn Surborg, who has set up the project a long time ago, 5.5 years, and handing it over quite soon to Andrea Terran. I've seen her there in the back. Thanks also to you, and in the meantime also then Katlau was taking a lot of care, and of course Mia Sampao, who brought the thing to the results we have now. So my special thanks to all of you, and with these words I want to remember again, hand over, no closure, hand over, hand over, hand over, hand over, and we are continuously looking on it, forward for hopefully and for sure getting more results to be achieved even, and also being happy about the results which will be achieved in future, and having also another reason to celebrate in the upcoming years on the results. Looking forward, and I wish this event, this Handover event, good success, and I'm sure we will meet again in order to look on the further results. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Hand over. All right, 5.5 years. Thank you for that. So to present the project milestones is Dr. Bjorn Soberg, heading the Climate Change and Disaster Risk Management portfolio at GIC in the Philippines since 2017, working closely with various government agencies and civil society organizations as cluster coordinator responsible for the overall coordination of the climate change and disaster risk management portfolio. Please welcome Dr. Bjorn Soberg.
Okay, thank you very much for this introduction. Yusek Rosales, pleasure to be here. Nice to see you again. POPCOM, of course, Laura from German Embassy, Emmanuel, and Didi Takadona. I think I do mention you especially at this point because I think it was you and I who've been here for the entire period of this HMCCC program. So I do want to mention you and give you a special mention on this occasion. What my task is for here now is to really kind of, you've already heard a lot about a few of the highlights, a few of the points that HMCCC is about, but I will walk you through the program now and what has happened over the last 5.5 years and what were the highlights. And I want to invite you to go on this journey with me and just listen to the story. Normally what happens when we start a program and we do a planning mission and so on, then it's very strongly driven by the German side, and us, GIZ, as an implementing agency, we come with our logo. Now at this point, which is not a closing but a handover, this bears the handwriting of the Population Commission, and it's the corporate design of the Population Commission. If you turn back there to the banners in the background, this is already, this has government ownership. These are the products of the Population and Commission and Development, and I think that's really one of the highlights we can mention in this project, that we've been working in a technical cooperation manner right from the beginning, hand in hand, and that's, I think, was part of what makes this so successful. So that was more or less the project background already. I mentioned it right here. HMCCC and I personally arrived roughly at the same time. In May 2017, was one of my first tasks was to accompany the planning mission or the appraisal mission for the project, and then we walked along through this, and I'm happy that I can hand over now, and unfortunately also come bring the German contribution to a close for now, at least for this very specific project. But as Laura mentioned earlier, there are of course many more things in the area of climate change to come. What was really our starting position, and what is HMCCC? Human mobility in the context of climate change. I think it says all what it is. It's migration in the context of climate change. We always had migration. It's a means of life for many people. But we, certainly 5-6 years ago, we were not very well informed. I don't want to say clueless, but we were not very well informed about what are the effects of climate change really on migratory behavior and patterns, and what contributions does climate change really make. You sometimes hear statements like, oh, climate change, they're climate migrants, and climate change is a major driver. And I think it's much more differentiated. And some of this was clear when we began the program, but it wasn't really clear what are the drivers, what are the decision-making processes in individuals, in families, in households for migrating, and what role does climate change play in this. So that was the starting position for HMCCC. And here in the Philippines, we then, oops, that went way too fast. Just give me 1 second. So there we go. So here in the Philippines, we essentially focused on two aspects and two sets of activities, which were knowledge and capacity. And I think those were also the big outputs and that we've produced through this project. The knowledge base on human mobility in the context of climate change was increased. I think we can say that. We have produced quite a large number of knowledge products that are now accessible through the website of the Population Commission and really kind of contribute to this knowledge and capacity. We looked at all levels, sort of what is the institutional setup, what are the skill sets, what is needed in order to integrate human mobility, integrate climate change into population development. And we've heard it earlier, so one of the big results is that climate change is integrated in the population and Development Plan, the Philippine Population and Development Plan, the PPDP. In terms of knowledge management, we have trainings, knowledge sharing exercises with a lot of research and knowledge products. A really kind of intensive research. We've worked together with the United Nations University on this and local universities, including the UP and many other institutions. And Ateneo as well, and I do remember actually, as we mentioned Ateneo, we do have to mention De La Salle. There was an activity with them as well. So, so the many research institutions here in the Philippines. On the capacity development, we focused really on two levels, three in a way. So we have the Philippine Population and Development Plan, sort of the institutional level, what kind of frameworks need to be there to make capacity work. We've looked at the work with the institution POPCOM on what is the institutional setup, what is needed in order to integrate climate change into your work, and then lots of training, of course, and knowledge, the individual capacity development, the human capacity development. If we look at it in numbers, then so there's one big number, which is the 10,400. It's the number of people we reached through advocacy campaigns, and it's a number we could track and trace directly, right? And we certainly hope that we reach a lot more people than 10,400 through multiplier effects, but this is what we can attribute to the project, 10,400 through advocacy campaigns, webinars, for example, where people participate in our outreach activities. We had a target group, or we have reached 1,200 participants, individuals, through trainings and knowledge sharing exercises. while 454 hours of intensive research have been done. That's certainly what we can account for, and often having a research background, having spent a lot of time in universities myself, I can certainly tell you research continues all the time, so this is what we can account for and present here. 198, so almost 200 hours of intensive capacity development. These are the trainings which are very specifically designed for the different institutions in the Philippines in looking kind of what knowledge is needed there. And so 198 hours is actually many days and weeks of capacity development exercises. Institutional partners, we're 28, and I think there is it's important to mention here that we did put a lot of emphasis on integrating many stakeholders here, because there's so many dimensions coming together. And I think that is also one of the things that became very clear. It's just not human mobility and climate change. We put the two together. It's a lot of natural science aspects that are in there in order to understand the climate change. It's social science aspects that are in there to understand population development. It's a local government units, many different national government agencies that do need to be involved in here, and we have involved them all in the SCIM, in the subcommittee on internal migration, which we could then use as a technical working group for the topic of human mobility in the context of climate change. So 15 of the institutions have participated in our development, capacity development measures, and last but not least, the 10 knowledge products, research publications, solid information that are now included in the knowledge portal developed with the support of this project. If we move on to the very specific aspects of knowledge sharing, I'll just walk you a little bit through the timeline. I think this is also for many of you who've been with the project for some time to remember kind of the good times and the highlights. Started way before the pandemic and went through the pandemic, and it's actually a really happy moment to be able to be here with you now in this room and feeling reasonably safe about that. So back in 2018, we already then started with a topic on loss and damage. Some of our colleagues from headquarters and worked with the Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development and delivered this training here. And then quite obviously you just heard from Laura Axler that this is a continuous topic in the relationships between Germany and the Philippines, and there's lots more work to be done. In 2019, international conference Germany, and the number of participants here in the room, and I think I do remember Rachel was part of that delegation at the time, and I think that was very fruitful exchange also with other participant countries from the Pacific Islands and the Caribbean at the time. So we had this study tour in 2019. In 2020, there was the HMCCC Filipino Youth Summit, and this was a time when we went into the difficult times of lockdown, and when a lot of our activities would start to be online activities. But we did continue to work. I think coming out of it now, we do realize what a difference this makes to actually meet in person. But in 2021, we could also, one of the highlights was the Internal Migration and Development Summit. It was a big online event where we brought a lot of the stakeholders together. 2022, we could then continue again with the trainings and in person, and this is where we went much more into the operationalization. So the digitalization of the Registry of Barangay, Inhabitants and Migrants, and also on the banner back there, we've started that in 2 local government units. I think it's a major way forward to manage human mobility in the context of climate change, and it's one of the aspects where we could support the Population Commission in making the start. and which can now be rolled out, where the pilot can really be moved forward. And then we had conversations with Yusek Basales and Didi Takadon on this already. There's budget made available to move this forward. There's plans made to use this pilot project and roll it out widespread. And I think it's a testimony to the quality of the cooperation that we had over the years. We did participate in a forum by the DFA on the Global Compact for Migration and the Paris Climate Agreement. That was also in 2022, and then finally now in 2023, we're follow-up trainings. We still did this a couple of weeks ago, training of trainers to exactly roll out programs now in the hands of POPCOM. Similar timeline here. I'll skip through this relatively quickly, but I think many of you were involved in that. So take a look at the pictures and what we did in terms of organizational support and the institutional support. So this is the capacity development with the institution that I've mentioned earlier. There'll be enough. Sorry. Here we go. It's a bit of a back and forth journey somehow, but so in 2019 we had a deepening session on population and environment with HMCCC, and we had one of the important meetings of the subcommittee on internal migration. And it's the idea from the global program was to have technical working groups in the countries that we operate. And of course, it's always much better to work on an existing structure than setting up something new. So we realized pretty quickly that here in the Philippines, we have a subcommittee on internal migration, which is already addressing this topic. And we can use this subcommittee, the SKIM, as the technical working group to just integrate the aspect of climate change in it, which has now resulted in a major policy outcome. That's 2020 in the corner there. We've done an organizational review and development, one of the results being that knowledge management can be much stronger integrated into the institutional DNA, and especially knowledge management on climate change and human mobility. Again, we had validation workshops with the SKIM. This is one of the aspects that continued with us, the SKIM meetings, validating a lot of the outputs, and there was coordinated mentoring of the local climate change action plans organized, and I think that's where we could take our work on human mobility and climate change really to the local level. So we had the Balik Provincia. We'll refrain from saying it all in Tagalog. So the technical working group continued online, as you can see on that picture. That's not in a real lecture theater, obviously. That's the team's background there. And then looking back, and then eventually really kind of got a cohesive knowledge management learning framework and roadmap for HMCCC in 2021. The portfolio workshop series, he's one of the knowledge products produced through the project. And in the end, one of the major outcomes is, as mentioned before, the contribution to the Philippine Population and Development Program, the Plan of Action. That was the organizational setup. We do have a few testimonies, and I don't want to skip them actually. I think it's getting long, but I think they really are very nice. So the way I remember knowledge management with GIZ is very exciting. We're building the knowledge portal in the POPCOM website based on HMCCC. We developed a knowledge management roadmap with GIZ to establish HMCCC as one of the target expertise of POPCOM. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to read this and to hear this, and it sort of makes you realize that there's a good reason why we do this. So, okay. I think people are in the room on there, so I do realize. So the cooperation of POPCOM with GIZ in digitalizing RBIM responds to the clamor of cities and municipalities to take internal migration data to a higher level of governance in the Philippines, and it's something we very much look forward to. So the governance aspect stressed here, and again, it's a very nice testimonial to the work we have done over the years. POPCOM has become very proactive in mainstreaming HMCCC in its activities, enhancing co-ownership with other stakeholders. Enhancing co-ownership with other stakeholders should still be worked out, but we advocate more with stakeholders to conduct trainings and advocacy campaigns on HMCCC. So we really kind of the multi-stakeholder approach, the emphasis on cooperating with other institutions, and last but not least, it's our hope and vision that HMCCC will be more localized and not only mainstreamed at the national level, especially with the impact that we will create. There are also so many learnings, new things, and so many inspirations with GIZ to take from here. And so thank you very much for this vote of confidence, really, these testimonials. The last one really emphasizing again multi-level, national level, local level, how that has to go together. The decision to migrate is inherently local, but there's a role for the national government to manage that. Gives me an opportunity to extend these words of thanks, because I'm standing here in a way representative of the team that has worked over the years on HMCCC. Emmanuel mentioned them already, so there's the number of the advisors in the background there. So thank you very much for making this happening on our hand, on our side, and thank you very much for making this happening on the side of the population. Okay, so here are some of the examples of what came out of it. I'll do this very quickly now. So the project outcomes are really in the areas of trainings, knowledge management, research, and organizational, institutional support, and government programs and tools. That was the last one. Salamat.
Maraming salamat po. So we've really gone a long way. Thank you very much, Dr. Bjorn. So we've gone from capacity development, data management and governance, knowledge management and communications, and knowledge products. Thank you very much for telling us about the project milestones. And before we move on, we'd like to acknowledge from Oxfam, Mr. Cheng Pagulayan. Are you here po? Ayun. Okay, and then ayun, Ms. Josie Almeda, the Executive Director of PSRTI. She's here. Thank you for coming, ma'am. Suki, the Executive Director of the Philippine Social Sciences Commission. Ms. Lourdes Portus. Ayun, si Edie Portus is here. Thank you very much. Ayun. So at this point, ladies and gentlemen, we want to present to you the highlights of your project, this handover in a nutshell. So let's watch this.
Filipinos generally possess versatility. Filipinos generally possess versatility. Therefore, many of us migrate from one place to another due to various social, economic, and political factors. One of these critical factors is the slow onset events of climate change. Since the Philippines is located in the Pacific Ring of Fire, it becomes more vulnerable to climate variations. Thus, the national government, through the Commission on Population and Development, partners with the German Agency for International Cooperation, or the GIZ, on addressing sustainable management
of human mobility in the context of climate change, or the HMCCC. The GIZ provided technical assistance such as capacity building of population and development integration, or POPDIV focal persons, development of knowledge management portal, digitalization of Registry of Barangay Inhabitants and Migrants, or RBIM tool orientation, technical assistance integrating HMCCC in communication and development plans, and development of knowledge management tools such as working paper series on internal migration. Let us now hear from the project implementers how these initiatives on the HMCCC help in the implementation of the Philippine Population and Development Program, or the PPDP.
I'm Eileen Serrano, the Chief of the Policy Development and Data Management Division of the Commission on Population and Development. The GIC has been working with us since 2016, 2017, and it has been supporting our climate change advocacies in terms of policy making. As you know, the Philippines is severely affected by the negative effects of climate change. Natural calamities are common, and this has led to migration, particularly in affected areas. POPCOM as an organization considers three population processes. These are births, deaths, and migration. Population is consequently affected by the movements of those three. The first two, the births and deaths, is easily determined. However, nobody has kept track or is tracking local migration patterns. And with this in mind, the RBIM the Registry of Barangay Inhabitants came into conception in the Philippines. Primarily, it is a database that contains information about the residents and migrants living in a specific barangay, which is the smallest administrative division in the country. Now, the purpose of the RBIM is to keep track of the population of each barangay and to provide a comprehensive and updated database for use in various government programs and services. Now, what the GIZ did was to digitize it. So it went from regular RBIM and then RBIM version 2 and now the digitization. And we are very thankful because digitization can bring significant benefits to local government units in the Philippines, like includes improved efficiency. It costs, there is a reduction in the cost, and digitization of local government operations and services can lead to streamlined processes. And of course, it can reduce paperwork, resulting in faster and more efficient delivery of public service and efficiency in the government. Okay, it can then lead on to more transparency and improved data management and enhanced citizens' engagement. So until now, we are still using this RBIM version 2, but we are leveling up in the coming months for the RBIM digitalization, and GIZ has been helping us a lot through technical assistance, and so we are very much grateful. Thank you.
I'm Lyra Borja of the Capacity Development and Field Operations Division of POPCOM. The CDFOD is a relatively new division. Nonetheless, we are fortunate enough to receive technical assistance from the GIZ. As part of building and strengthening the performance of our core tasks and functions, the GIZ initially provided CDFOD with an orientation and capacity development. The orientation introduced to us the basic concepts of capacity development as well as its essential processes and practical tools. It was followed by a training workshop to build the awareness and capacities of the central and regional staff of POPCOM in localizing the concept of human mobility in the context of climate change, or the HMCCC. It's basically understanding HMCCC and identifying entry points of integration in local initiatives. We are also engaged in the joint efforts of POPCOM and GIZ in digitalizing the Registry of Barangay Inhabitants and Migrants as part of capacitating the local government units in establishing a local population and development database as inputs to local development planning. Moving forward, we will endeavor to integrate all the inputs of the GIZ in our continued undertakings to localize the population and development program. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the GIZ for its unwavering support to POPCOM in our effort to empower the Filipino families and communities.
I'm Susan Codonco, Division Chief of KNCD. As part of the partnership of POPCOM and GIZ, POPCOM received technical assistance from the Human Mobility in the Context of Climate Change program in developing a knowledge management portal under the POPCOM main website. This is a public-facing portal where knowledge products generated by the HMCCC program are uploaded to enable sharing with POPCOM's clients on the learnings on internal migration in the context of climate change. Moving forward, we hope that the portal will be responsive to the needs of both external and internal stakeholders in terms of providing a venue for knowledge sharing for all knowledge products relative to internal migration in the context of climate change, and to create space to tackle issues and provide interventions on climate change and its effect on human mobility.
My name is Deogracia Silva. I'm presently the Planning Officer 4 and concurrently the Acting Division Chief of the Planning, Monitoring, and Valuation Division. Our current activity with GIZ is the Local Development Planning Journey. The activity aims to enhance POPCOM's capacities in scaling up climate change and human mobility through the POPDEV integration approach in the formulation of local development plans. It will capacitate POPCOM staff to develop and use key messages encouraging LGUs to integrate climate change and human mobility indicators in their plans. GIZ and staff help POPCOM with the facilitation and documentation, lead the implementation of the training, and co-design the training program and the venue and accommodation of the participants. The participants, equipped with enhanced understanding of the interrelationship of climate change and human mobility, shall utilize their learnings in developing strategies to integrate climate change and human mobility in local development planning.
POPCOM commits to continue to adopt and integrate the concepts and interrelationships between human mobility and climate change. In addition, it will also take the lead for the HMCCC mainstreaming and the population and development programs and strategies.
Chief of the Policy Development and Data Management Division, Ms. Eileen Serrano. Let's give her a hand. And the Division Chief of the Knowledge Management and Communications Division, Ms. Susana Codonco, to discuss further the technical assistance of GIZ. Point, can you introduce yourselves
I'm over
to the audience?
You've seen me the longest video. I'm Eileen. Hello, Bjorn. Nice seeing you again. And I'm the Division Chief of the Policy and Data Management Division of POPCOM. Good afternoon, everyone, to our esteemed guests present today in this gathering. I'm Susan Codonco from the Knowledge Management and Communications Division. You have seen us earlier in the video. So,
all right. So we've heard about it. We've heard about the projects that Dr. Bjorn has spoken about the milestones. Can you tell us more about more details about the projects that GIZ has extended to POPCOM? Who wants to go first?
There are several. I can hardly count, but the most, I think, to me, the one that comes closest to heart was about the POPDEV deepening I've had the chance to attend also the one that was held in Cebu City. Of course, the SCIM, the Subcommittee on Internal Migration, and now the digitalized RBIM.
So can you tell us more about RBIM? What is it about? What is the objectives? How has it helped POPCOM at the local level?
RBIM, as I said a while ago, this is the collection of data of residents and migrants in certain locality, like in the barangay, which is the smallest administrative units. Now, this data is owned by the LGU themselves, and we are just conduit in giving them this project, and the data will be theirs to use in their planning, and then targeted development of projects and project implementation.
All right, and I know that it's also an entry point for us at the local level for data management and data generation, right? So how is it relevant, and how has it helped POPCOM?
It's very relevant because when you have data, you have gathered data, you will have a baseline information. So you will now have a basis to compare whether you improved or what your status, your standing. So you have a baseline, and then when you have a baseline, and more or less you are able to monitor, then you can have a better assessment. You can assess the needs, and if you have a better assessment, you can now target and develop programs very particularly to the needs of your basic population in the locality.
So thank you very much, GIZ, for enabling us, facilitating that. So how about for the knowledge management and communication side? Ms. Susan, can you tell us how GIZ has helped POPCOM?
Well, GIZ has helped POPCOM in establishing the knowledge management, particularly on the creation, on where to start when it comes to establishing a KM in the agency. So we start with a focus group discussion for the components of what KM is made of. Of course, there's the content, the technology, the culture, the people. And all this led to the creation, for example, of a tool, the knowledge portal. So the knowledge portal that is now embedded in our POPCOM website, wherein you can find most of the knowledge products that GIZ has produced and turned over to POPCOM, of course, for, yes, as you can see, this is where the knowledge products are located, under the, I think, the resources. So if you scroll down below on the POPCOM website, you will find the knowledge products therein. Okay, so when you click the knowledge portal icon, you will see this with the icons and very attractive icons referring to the knowledge products, and down below we have these are some of the tools from the e-library to the community of practice and the knowledge products at the lower part. These are the knowledge products that have been turned over to POPCOM, and we are proud to say that we have these materials that we could share with our stakeholders for them to be made as references when replicating, for example, climate change initiatives in their respective organizations.
All right. So now, ladies and gentlemen, these are available. You can go to our POPCOM website if you need knowledge products, more knowledge on HMCCC, and then also we have some.
Yes, ma'am. If you will allow me, let me just show you the basic features of the digital RBIM. Next slide. And here, we used to have this paper-based survey barangay survey or their administrative data, and then we have translated it into the digital form. So we have migrated the paper answer to the paper forms, and then put it there place it there in the digital form, in the digital format. In the next slide, please. So these are the basic process. There will be a data collector within the barangay, then it will be reviewed, and the barangay official is in charge, and we have the super admin who has the capacity or the power to allow someone to look into the data themselves. And then this is what the user interface looks like. Next slide. It's very friendly. You just have to click. It's not very complicated, and thank you to Assist for giving us this very friendly and user-friendly basic RBIM. And it doesn't matter if you are offline, because you can use it when you are when you don't have an internet access. But then once you have the data or the signal, then it will automatically load, so you can use it offline. Very particularly useful in barangays that don't have internet capacity or capability. So next slide is this is the web interface. So hopefully we can launch this in the coming months. That's the RBIM digitization.
All right, so we know how hard it is to get data, particularly also on migration and at the local level. So this has helped and will help our local government units in generating data on this related to climate change and human mobility. So, ladies and gentlemen, you can again visit our website, and RBIM is available also at the local level. And to formally hand over and unveil and launch, may we request the division chiefs to join us. May we request our Undersecretary Lisa Grace Bersales, our Deputy Executive Director Lolito Tacardon, Dr. Bjorn, Ma'am Laura, and Sir Gerbhardt to join us, Sir Emmanuel to join us as we unveil and formally launch this. Okay, formally launch the digital version of the RBIM and also the knowledge portal. All right, so let us count. Let us all count, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's give it up for the digitalized RBIM and the knowledge portal. And you can scan this on your phone to know more about the knowledge portal and the digitalized RBIM. Let's give a hand to GIZ and of course POPCOM and the German government. Maraming salamat po. Alright, maraming salamat po. And please remain here as we invite our division chiefs also. Ms. Lyra Borja, can you join us? Mr. Marlo Del Servo, can you please join us as we hand over formally? Alright, and launch this cube. Okay. Ayan. Alright, so to formally hand over. Alright, so we will discuss what will be handed over to Yusek and our DED Tacardon to help. Alright. So this is the cube to symbolize our official documents and technical assistance and knowledge products that GIZ has given to POPCOM. So here it is. Let's open it. And the first one is capacity development on integrating human mobility and climate change and development programming. You've seen it. All right. They've extended help through building the capacities of POPCOM officers and staff. And next one is The next one is the knowledge portal that our division chief has spoken about. So it's available on the POPCOM website. The next one. Alright, the next one is the Subcommittee on Internal Migration Action Plan. Because of the project of GIZ, we have had this, NEDA, our mother agency, form this, and we are the chairperson of the SCIM, or the Subcommittee on Internal Migration, and also the inclusion of HMCCC, HMCCC, okay, in our Philippine Population and Development Program of Action. And also, very importantly, I think this is one of the highlights, no, of the technical assistance of GIZ, the digitalized RBIM. This is one of the ways where POPCOM and local population officers can be known, and it's an entry point for us at the local level for data generation, data analysis, and generating a baseline data. No? So let us give a hand to GIZ. Maraming salamat po. Alright, baka our USEC might want to share a few words to thank our GIZ.
Maraming salamat, Nakashon. This is really what me personally, this is what I really wanted moving forward for the Commission on Population Development, because we really need to capacitate our local government units to use data and empirical-based decision making. And we need the tool for them to be able to put the data in and also do their analytics. So thank you very much. We are actually, and I shared this with Laura earlier, where I said that moving forward, I'm going to do a visit with the San Juan City Mayor and offer to him this digitalized RBIM, because they are clamoring for the database. At the same time, and I'm looking at the Executive Director Josie Almeda of the PSRTI, there is a need to use the data in the RBIM for data analytics, data visualization for the mayor. So thank you very much to GIZ, the German government.
Maraming salamat po, with emphasis on handover. So at this point, we'd like to request our GIZ representatives to also formally thank everyone who joined us and graced our presence today. So they have a simple token for everyone. Okay, so for USEC and Miss Laura, thank you very much for gracing our handover. Of course, for Dita Cardon also, and our divisions also have. Alright, our divisions also have a token. So again, let's give a hand to GIZ and POPCOM. Again, maraming salamat po. Alright? Okay, let's have a photo op. So may we request everyone to have a photo op? Is it okay that we do it here? Please join po. Division chiefs, please join our FBMed, of course. Our planning officer, okay, Marites Cipriano, please join us. Alright. So Mia and Kat, please join this photo op. Okay. So, sino una? Ikaw? Okay. So go. Please look at our photographer Ian here.
Closer lang to. Closer on the right side, please. Okay, ready. 1, 2, 3. Another 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Sorry. Okay, 1, 2, 3.
Alright, maraming salamat. Let's give a hand to to our dignitaries here and our special guests in our POPCOM division, marami pong salamat. And to conclude, no, we are nearing the end of our program. To conclude this activity, we will hear about the next steps for HMCCC in POPCOM. Please welcome, all right, our youngest ever Deputy Executive Director. Okay, so I'll just read an introduction of our DED so you'll know him better. Okay, he has a master's degree in population studies from the University of the Philippines, Diliman, and currently completing his doctorate. He has represented the country in various international conferences and has extensive training and background on demography, population studies, research, policy development, communication, and advocacy, reproductive health, and other population-related matters. Please welcome the former Regional Director of POPCOM National Capital Region and currently our Deputy Executive Director and youngest ever at that. Please welcome Mr. Lolito Tacardon. Sir Boyet.
Right, thank you very much. Now that the project is handed over to POPCOM, the question now is, so what now? So that's why I'll be discussing and sharing to you some of our key strategies to sustain and to mainstream this very valuable project within the population development strategies. But before that, I'd like to underscore that this HMCCC project is not solely a project of POPCOM. Actually, right from the start, we have organized the subcommittee of internal migration as an interagency platform for the implementation of this initiative, where we got to engage, of course, the original members of the SCIM, of the Social Development Committee headed by ANEDA. But we expanded the SCIM to include different agencies working on climate change and disaster risk reduction and management, including the Climate Change Commission, the DNR, the Local Government Academy, and OCD, and other relevant ACATIM also, and other government agencies working on this, because when we were offered the project, actually, we welcomed it with open arms, because the interlinkages of human mobility and climate change was actually one of the uncharted territory within our program, because we didn't have actually the technical knowledge, the understanding of climate change, although we have the expertise on human mobility, but the interlinkages was something that we need to understand more. That's why we welcome this opportunity, not only as a platform for increasing our reach to the different agencies working on the environment, which we know is also a very important sector in relation to population impact or population dimension, but more importantly, to set up a template and a tangible platform for addressing the integrated concern of human mobility and other population dynamics with environmental concerns, specifically climate change. And as was shared to you, we have actually achieved a lot of initiatives and accomplishments under these projects, which we as an organization, POPCOM, is very happy and glad to continue on through our strategies. So basically, just to ensure the sustainability and mainstreaming of this initiative in our programs and projects, in collaboration, of course, with the different national government agencies and relevant CSOs. No, we are intending to take this course of action for the sustainability of this program. One is, of course, the adoption of HMCCC as an integral strategy for POPDEV intersectoral approach. It was shared a while ago that we are in the process of finalizing our Philippine Population and Development action plan, which lays down the different strategies in pursuing the strategy of the government to optimize the demographic opportunity as well as address the remaining challenges of population in the country. And one of that is the promotion of the integration of population as it relates to different development concerns. And one of that is environment, specifically climate change. So we'd like to expand further. While we already have achieved and developed some knowledge products, we'd like to still deepen our understanding on the interconnection of human mobility and climate change. As you may have noticed now in the portal or the knowledge portal that was constructed under the website of POPCOM is still wanting of relevant studies. So it's still evolving. And we'd like to open this to other agencies which have relevant studies to share in that knowledge portal. The different researches and studies that you have undertaken so that we can reach out together to different stakeholders. And of course, we'd like to, as a part of localizing the RBIM, which was also turned over to us, we'd like to further improve the different databases for different population processes, including human mobility, which is the most difficult population process to track. So, of course, we'd like to further improve our RBIM, the demographic and socioeconomic information system, gearing towards GIS-based platform for all of this, so that we can have more useful database especially for different sectoral agencies and local government agencies. And we'd like also to pursue, given the different knowledge that we have now, different integrated and interagency and intersectoral strategies like pursuing the integrated approach on population, health, environment, and other development strategies. So that means we will still be continuing our advocacy and partnership with different government agencies that participated in this project to come up with more specific intervention to pursue human mobility and climate change interlinkages. And we will be mobilizing, of course, the subcommittee on internal migration. We just discussed with you said that I think for this quarter we have to convene already the CIM because we already have an agenda specifically on how to sustain this initiative, and the subcommittee will remain as a functional committee that will pursue and advance the agenda of HMCCC. And another would be the integration of HMCCC concepts in the climate change and disaster risk reduction and management framework. I think this is one of the critical strategy that we have identified before. I think in Cebu, where we actually realized that there's really a need to harmonize the different frameworks for addressing climate change and disaster risk. But emphasis on, of course, the different population dimensions, which are really critical in the context of this environmental concerns. So that means putin lang dito si Commissioner, So we will be pursuing all of these initiatives to come up with a more integrated framework. So POPCOM will be more visible now in the, of course, advocating and providing technical inputs in understanding population as the impact on climate change and disaster risk reduction and mitigation, especially also at the local level. And next would be, we'd like also to pursue the track of policy development for the institutionalization of the concepts and the different interventions that we have produced under this project. And we'd like that the interconnection of or impact of population and on climate change should be one of the policy anchor of our initiative to revise our national population and development policy. So as you know, POPCOM is working on the improvement or enhancement of the existing national population policy by broadening its scope to cover different population dynamics as they relate to other development concerns. Because right now, our national population policy is still fertility oriented. So it's high time to expand that to make it more relevant in the context of today's issues, development issues, including climate change. And of course, we'll pursue this agenda, as I mentioned, through the Subcommittee of Internal Migration, and we'll be constantly reporting and carrying out this agenda within the Social Development Committee. And of course, will always be an advocate for the integration of the HMCCC in different policy proposals, because from time to time the Congress consults us on our inputs on different socioeconomic proposed policies that have implications or with implications on population and development. So we'll take that as a platform for advancing that agenda. Next will be cascading whatever capacities that were developed in POPCOM to the different institutions also, from the national, regional, and at the local level. So we'll continue to develop capacities, institutional capacities, by developing different projection and analytical tools and information systems that can be used in the estimating the impact of population on different development concerns, specifically climate change. So that's one of the evolving role of POPCOM in terms of the development of the tools that institutions can use in understanding the impact of population under sectoral concern. And of course, we will continuously design and conduct capacity building interventions for POPCOM. So whatever capacities that were developed here from this project, we hope to roll that out at the regional down to the local level, especially within the context of devolution, where POPCOM now is really focusing more on the localization of the different population development strategies, and now it includes the HMCCC framework. And lastly, we will continue to review and assess our organizational capacity so that we can continuously respond to the evolving needs of our constituents and our beneficiaries, especially in understanding further the impact of population on climate change. So we are actually in the process now of organizational development, and soon, and hopefully, we'll be able to discuss other areas of improvement when it comes to the competency and capacity of POPCOM through our continual strategic planning that will be done in the coming days. Right? And of course, we'll take opportunity of the knowledge platform that was developed under our website through the knowledge portal for HMCCC. And as I mentioned, we are encouraging and requesting all government agencies to share whatever studies and researches that you have that can be uploaded in this website, so that we can reach out together to other stakeholders. And we will continue also to under the KMCT to develop useful advocacy and communication materials to increase public awareness, and also to improve policy environment through advocacy initiatives. So we'll continue the development, production, and dissemination of printed, ABPs, and other materials, particularly taking advantage of the social media platforms to continuously promote the interconnection of human mobility and climate change. Next. And that's it. So these are some of the strategies that hopefully would sustain the gains that we have generated out of this project. So once more, thank you very much to the federal government, Republic of Germany, through the GIZ, for giving us this opportunity of improving the capacity of POPCOM as an agency to deal with the interconnected issues of human mobility and climate change. Thank you very much.
Maraming salamat, DD Boye, for telling us the next steps and how it will be integrated in POPCOM. So to formally close, this handover celebration is again the Division Chief of the Policy Development and Data Management Division, Ms. Eileen Serrano. Palakpakan po natin. But of course, this is not yet ending because we still have a networking activity. There's still wine and cheese for everyone.
Yes, please stay after the closing of the handover for some cocktails. And again, our appreciation to our German partners, to the federal government of Germany, and of course to our bosses. And let me just recap what our DED has said. In moving forward, we shall continue to produce materials, particularly on HMCC projects, and we will continue to capacitate our local government partners, our stakeholders, including our POPCOM regional offices. Okay, so again, thank you very much to our other guests who really took time to come over here in Discovery Suites. Salamat po sa inyong oras. I know we are so busy sometimes that it's very hard for us to, just attend and give time and listen, but truly we are very grateful that you have attended this turnover ceremonies. Again, to our POPCOM staff, our partners, our CSO, and to our commissioner, CCC, and to our PSA, and yes, other partners. Thank you very much, and magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat.
Sound. Alright, so this program is formally ending, but we still have the networking activity. If you want to know more about RBIM, the SCIM, Knowledge Portal, and there at the back, Capacity Development Initiatives, we are ready to answer your questions. And also there's wine and cheese for everyone. So let us all get to know each other. Maraming salamat po for coming, and thank you to our Facebook viewers. And please, since we are ISO certified, we have an evaluation sheet. You can please, we'd like to request you to please scan the QR code on your tables, and please rate us, evaluate us for our ISO. Again, please rate us. Our QR code is there at the table. Nakikita ko, there are some scanning it. Maraming salamat. We are truly grateful.